LAWSON Learning Pathway Series. The 50 Procurement Definitions and Statements You Should Know offers common terms, connotations, and interpretations used in procurement to effect better communication and understanding when dealing with the suppliers. They are by no means comprehensive. You should further expand additional definitions, statements, practices, and connotations which are unique to your procurement organization. 1. Procurement objectives, roles, and responsibilities. For a start, it is important to have clear guidelines of objectives, roles, and responsibilities in procurement. Every procurement staff must know his own obligations, responsibilities, and limitation to conduct and act on behalf of the procurement organization. 2. Respect, integrity, ethics, and honest. A statement to explain the importance of ethical value, honesty, respect, and integrity when dealing with parties. This will differentiate the values of a procurement professional. 3. Quotation and bid document requirements. To demonstrate fair assessment and awarding of purchase contracts, the procurement policies and procedures should provide guidelines how quotations and bids are been evaluated and awarded. It is that the company is not obliged to award to the lowest bid. 4. Authority to select and approve vendors and external providers. It is paramount importance to make known to every procurement personnel their authorization limit and responsibilities when purchasing of goods and services from external providers. 5. Determination of quantity to buy. Many procurement white papers have written and published various stock replenishment methods based on certain ideal circumstances and criteria. It is difficult to achieve due to the lack of understanding of data analytics and data management of market conditions and behavior. You should conduct data analytics seriously to achieve a more realistic order quantity. 6. Authority to question procurement specifications and standards. A statement stating the discretionary rights of the buyer to question and seek clarification with the seller when the product received does not meet the procurement specifications and standards as written in the purchase order. 7. Purchase order acknowledgement. A statement highlighting the importance of order acknowledgement prior supply action and delivery. This is also to ensure that the seller has unqualified acceptance of a binding contract and to prevent any misinterpretation and misunderstanding later. 8. Forward procurement. A procurement process to secure goods for future supply. This is especially true in farm-produced crops. Buyer would like to secure certain quantity of the crops before they are harvested and sold in the market. B. Airlines industry normally hedge aviation fuel 6 months in advance to meet operation requirements. And C. Supply of dairy milks and products are controlled by the cartel. The bidding is for 12 months in advance of delivery. 9. Blanket order. A purchasing method to secure supply of an agreed quantity, price, and delivery from the seller. This is often used for certain critical products where the market is in short supply and to ensure supply chain has not been broken. 10. Rush order and urgent purchase. A statement to define what constitutes a rush and urgent order and the procedure to handle and process the order in meeting operational requirements and customer expectation, expeditiously. 11. Purchase by sample. Sampling a product before purchasing is a very huge market for the retailing industry. The method used by the retailers account for 90% of successful business. And B. In the case of purchasing products based on sampling, it is important to stress and add in the purchase order that the bulk of the supply must be similar, if not identical to the sample been approved. 12. Unpriced purchase order. Issuing a purchase order without the price is tantamount to a blank check. The supplier is given the free hands to bill any amount deemed appropriated, unless it is from a trusted, integrity, and honest supplier. This method is certainly not encouraged. If it is unavoidable, you should include a clause stating that the final payment amount shall be determined by a qualified adjudicator appointed by the named institution and accepted by both parties. 13. Intracompany purchasing. A procurement of goods and services between 2 or more plants in companies within the same intracompany. Hence it is important that the top management sets the procurement guidelines, policies, procedures, and transparent to all participating intra-companies. 14. Local purchase, traditional. Most purchasing of goods and services starts with local sourcing to gain experience and knowledge. The advantages of local sourcing facilitate convenient access, communication, delivery, and face-to-face interactions, hence any matters arising can easily be resolved. 15. Consignment stock. This practice is quite common in the retail industry where a quantity of stock is consigned and displayed at the retailing sales outlet. Payment to the consignor is always upon a successful sale, as the stock ownership still consignor, hence insurance, loss and damage matters have to be discussed and agreed in advance. 16. International and global procurement. Generally, global sourcing is a broader purchasing concept to international procurement and is concerned with coordinating materials, flow, process, and last supply chain by B. Fins, 2015. International procurement normally deals with just 2 to 3 overseas suppliers directly, while global procurement may include a host of different stages of the supply chain from raw materials, semi-finished products, packaging, logistics, and last-mile delivery. A collaborative approach to global procurement is more promising and productive. 17. Repair and service contract. The success rate of these contracts depends very much on the procurement experience and knowledge to identify and match the scope of works required, and assess the ability of subcontractor to fulfill the contractual obligations. For the procurement of equipment and plants under the normal warranty extension of repair and service provision, it is just a matter of negotiating the best deal of what repair and service is entitled. If it is for a pure repair and service contract not related to the warranty extension, selecting, assessing, and evaluating the subcontractor required a more thorough and detailed investigation. 18. Nominated subcontractor. This is often found in the building and shipbuilding industries where the owner has a preference to use certain brand equipment and plant or certain technical expertise. During the contract negotiation stage, the buyer will specify in the bid document that the customer's nominated subcontractor shall be used on certain parts of the project construction. Seller, in this case, will be entitled to overriding fees or commissions to manage and cooperate with the nominated subcontractors. Payments of nominated subcontractors are usually through the main contractor. 19. Outsourcing risk management. Many organizations are outsourcing their supply chain to save cost, effort, and resources. An effective control framework is essential to ensure compliance with legal and regulatory requirements. This statement can be found in many procurement policies. It is untenable not to conduct risk management of outsourcing providers without weighing the financial and operations impact that could have prolonged and devastating damage to the supply chain. 20. Insurance and freight bill. When importing goods from an overseas supplier using the different modes of transportation, carriage for shipment, and delivery, it is important to know the responsibility, obligation, and risk associated with the importation. Reference to the Incoterms 2020 on EXW, FOB, CIF, CFR, CTT, etc. on parties' obligation, cost, responsibility, and risk would be useful. 21. Receiving and accepting goods procedure, a procedure to receive and accept goods from the supplier to minimize potential misunderstanding. If it is not clearly written prior to the purchase, any discrepancy would be difficult and sometimes impossible to resolve. Relying on arbitration and litigation proceeding to resolve the issue is very costly. 22. Delivery order and invoice discrepancy. It is important to address the likelihood of delivery and invoicing errors with the supplier to avoid any future claims and liability. A clear procedure of engagement and dispute resolution is important. The worst that can happen is a total shutdown of relationships and goodwill which were developed over the years. 23. Expediting and follow-up. Nothing is more assuring until the goods purchased are delivered on time with minimum cost and hastening effort. Expediting and hastening action should commence at the order confirmation stage. 24. Purchase records and registration. All purchases require some forms of documented evidence and record to be kept in soft or hard copy. It is quite common for procurement organizers, e-procurement, and e-enterprise systems, hence records are usually stored in soft copies for traceability and retrieval purpose. ISO-certified companies will certainly address it in their ISO quality document and record procedures. 25. Vendor contract and commitment, minimum volume contract, MVC, often refers to as throughput agreement and is an agreement under which a shipper or producer undertakes to transport an agreed minimum volume of commodities such as natural gas, NGL or crude oil through a third-party operator's assets, or capacity contract in order to secure a certain assured production quantity. The contract of this nature is normally into millions of dollars. Hence the contractual agreement between the parties should be airtight to avoid any possible loopholes to claim liability and damage to either party. 26. Legal aspects of procurement. All purchase agreements irrespective of the quantity and value are legally binding of both parties. Failure to comply and honor the contractual obligation and prestation will constitute a breach of the contractual agreement and claim for damage. It is a very serious matter which should not be taken too lightly. 27. Statute and substantive laws. Statutory law or statute law is written law passed by a body of the legislature. This is as opposed to oral or customary law, or regulatory law promulgated by the executive or common law of the judiciary. Statutes may originate from national, state legislatures, or local municipalities. Substantive law consists of written statutory rules passed by the legislature that govern how people behave. These rules, or laws, define crimes and set forth punishment. They also define our rights and responsibilities as citizens. There are elements of substantive law in both criminal and civil law. 28. Exclusion clauses. Force majeure, exclusion, clauses are quite common in the procurement contract. It is a provision to avoid liability due to unforeseen circumstances beyond the control and anticipation of the parties. For example, the lockdown actions were taken by countries against the COVID-19 pandemic where goods purchased from another country is forbidden to ship because of government directives or due impelling logistics and shipping difficulties. 29. Inspection and test procedure and liability. The procurement of equipment and plant where performance to specification and standard requirements are critical. It is important to include a clause stating that on-site inspection and final test acceptance shall be final and seller's defect liability to rectify or arrange for immediate replacement be considered. 30. Documentary credit and mode of payment for overseas procurement. In international procurement, the term is usually based on letter of credit, LC, payment. This is the most common and preferred payment mode because parties to the contract are a total stranger to each other, hence they are not comfortable if the seller extends credit for the goods delivered while the buyer is equally concerned of not getting the goods delivered if payment is made in advance. 31. Payment and currency. A statement in the purchase order stating that all payments shall be made in the currency as agreed rather than depending on the fluctuation of the currency market at the time of payment. If the purchaser is not familiar with the currency market, to use the local currency which he is familiar with or otherwise check with the finance department for a decision. 32. Payment terms and mode. Payment of goods and services has always been the primary concern of the suppliers. Ensuring and maintaining a healthy payment regime has many advantages and can be developing a total understanding of the accounting systems and mode of how the suppliers to be paid promptly. 33. Escrow account and institutional trust. In project procurement, it is quite common to have milestones or progress payments using escrow account or otherwise called institutional trust. As the project may take a long to complete, usually more than a year, the supplier would normally like to have progress payments when certain project milestones are reached or fulfilled. In order to ensure prompt milestones payment, most building construction projects engage a third party, a qualified quantity surveyor, to determine, assess, and certify the amount to be paid. 34. Factory acceptance test, where the procurement of capital and critical equipment, plant, and machinery with substantial value, quality assurance, testing, and acceptance should be done at the manufacturer's premises to save valuable time, cost, and effort. 35. Verification and validation of order. It is important to establish and agree on the discretionary rights to verify and validate the goods purchased on-site or at the point of delivery. A. Verification is to ensure that the goods manufactured to comply with the specification and standard given. B. Validation is an assurance that prior to delivering the finished goods are examined, inspected, and tested comply with the specification and standard as stated. 36. Rights of goods return order. Procurement specialists beware. A. The Lemon Law protects consumers against retailers who sell defective goods. If a defect surfaces within 6 months of purchase, it is assumed that the defect existed at the time of sale unless the retailer can prove otherwise. 20th of August 2015. B. The Unfair Contract Terms Act Cap 396 states an act to impose further limits on the extent to which civil liability for breach of contract, or for negligence or other breaches of duty, can be avoided by means of contract terms and otherwise. 20th of May 1994. 37. Surplus and deficient allowance. Some purchases where the quantity ordered cannot be accurately counted or predetermined and is only by weighing, measurement, and approximation upon final delivery, it is quite common to have in the purchase order a mini-maxi rules proviso. 38. Refund and reimbursement. This topic is hardly mentioned in most purchasing, however, it is an important consideration during the negotiation or pre-selection phase where the terms and conditions warrant a down payment or deposit before delivery. Basically, you want a money-back guarantee when delivery or goods received does not meet your specification and standard requirements. When drafting a purchase involving down payment and deposit, be sure to have a clause to address this issue. 39. DG Cargo, classification, and documentation. When purchasing products that are classified under the 9 classes of dangerous goods, it is very important to understand and be knowledgeable about the rules, regulations, restrictions, and laws governing them. Failure to comply will have serious legal and criminal consequences. 40. Safety data sheet. It is important to stress that the seller is fully responsible to delivering chemicals, chemical compounds, solids, and chemical mixtures with an appropriate and relevant safety data sheets, SDS. Otherwise the delivery shall be rejected and prevented from delivery to the procurement organization's premises. Please note, a safety data sheet, material safety data sheet, or product safety data sheet is information relating to occupational safety and health for the use of various substances and products. SDSs are a widely used system for cataloging information on chemicals, chemical compounds, and chemical mixtures. 41. Incoterms 2020. Incoterms are the international commerce terms transact and agreed between the seller and buyer for goods to be delivered nationally, and usually by sea, air, rail and road transportation. These rules are accepted by governments and legal authorities around the world, and they are clearly stating the tasks, costs and risks associated between the buyer and seller. 42. Disposal of chemicals, solid waste substances, radioactive materials, etc. A clause to impose on the seller to ensure proper disposal of chemicals, solid waste, hazard and toxic substances, radioactive materials, etc., used in the production of products purchased, and documented evidence to support the 43. Document custodian and retention period. Clause 7.5.3 Control of documented information of the ISO 9001:2015 Quality Management System states explicitly the requirements to control, distribute, store, retain and dispose of documented information. 44. Documentation and storage of procurement records. Every procurement transaction, irrespective of its value, required some forms of documentation and record. Today most procurement transactions are done online via internet, e-commerce, app, smartphone, web-based technologies, and the records are kept in cloud storage and warehousing. 45. Interdepartment and interfacing activities. As companies work and manage toward a more inclusive supply chain management solution to deliver the last mile, procedures, processes, and decision-making are now more integrated, hence decision made at the top will ripple down to the departments below. The procurement specialists would have to work within and around these inter-departments to ensure the supply lines are effective and efficient in meeting organization objectives and goal. 46. Internal segregation of duties. Segregation of duties is a key internal control intended to minimize the occurrence of errors or fraud by ensuring that no employee can both perpetrate and conceal errors or fraud in the normal course of his duties. 47. Relationships with other departments. Beside building strong and cooperative relationships with external interested parties, it is equally important to harmonize understanding, cooperation, and trust within internal department owners. The acronym of ENGAGE is earnest, neutral, genial, appreciative, grateful, and ethical. 48. Category management is a procurement concept to organize and range products into discrete grouping of similar or related products for better procurement specialization in resource management. It is practiced more visually in the retail industry. 49. Spend management. Spend management in procurement is to monitor, analyze and manage money spent to best effect in order to meet the procurement and financial budgets. It tracks every dollar spent from the acquisition of raw materials, semi-finished goods, logistics, order costs, warehousing, insurance, packaging and packing materials, tax, shipment, etc. up to the final stage of the goods been transformed or produced into finished products. The resultant is to determine and measure procurement contribution towards the dollar spent. 50. Joint research and development. It will come a time where the procurement organization must embark on the journey of joint research and development with promising suppliers and manufacturers to meet long-term challenge, mission, and aspiration of the company. There are a tremendous amount of benefits and gains. The aerospace industry is a good example. 51. Thank you for watching LAWSON Learning Pathway Series, the 50 Procurement Definitions and Statements.